Welcome to the Books and Music Review Show. Okay, so we're going to be here with Gerard today, and he's talking about a great movie that was just come out recently called Unplanned. Tell us all about it, Gerard.
Thank you for that introduction. Unplanned is basically the dramatization of the life story of a woman named Abby Johnson, who was the youngest director of a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic, and who, after 8 years, decided to abandon the abortion industry after coming face to face with what an abortion actually entails. And she went on to found an organization called And Then There Were None, which is a group that tries to rescue women from who are working in the abortion industry, but who are having grave doubts about their job and what they're doing. It tries to find them other forms of work and encourage them to leave their jobs, perpetuating something that kills somewhere on the order of 800,000 babies, unborn babies every year. So, Unplanned is the dramatization of her story. It 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 traces the arc of her move from being one of the most ardent supporters of abortion and one of the bright lights of Planned Parenthood, kind of the public face of Planned Parenthood, at least in this region of the country, to someone who's fighting against abortion and fighting to see that there are essentially that there are no abortions eventually, that the women who go to have abortions, the pregnant women, and the women who work in these clinics, and the men as well, realize or recognize that what they're doing is wrong. And the film itself has been greeted with a lot of controversy. Hollywood and the media in general is really resistant to actually looking at the facts of abortion and what having an abortion actually entails, the reasons why, or the reason why abortion is so prolific in this country. So they've done a lot to muddy the water and spread a lot of disinformation. And the premiere of this film is one of those instances where I think they've gone overboard trying to smear the motivations and impugn the character of not only Abby Johnson, but the people promoting this film who were involved in its production. It's being produced by Pureflix, which is a Christian-themed production company. And one of the interesting aspects of this film is that it's a bit of a departure from the typical fare that they produce. It's not a very didactic message. You get the impression that they simply wanted people to see and experience for themselves what an abortion entails, and they're not trying to proselytize. They're simply trying to show you the facts and hope that you come to the conclusion that it really is the murder of a child, an unborn child. And the media has done its best to kind of distort and manipulate and not really highlight what abortion is. And you can see this in the film reviews for this movie. from places like from newspapers and websites like Variety, The Onion, AV Club, and mainstream media sources. They don't seem to fundamentally grasp the aim of the filmmakers or the purpose of the film. And one of the things that is interesting is that they don't even seem to understand what it's like to work in a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic or to be an abortionist. And you can see that when they criticize the opening scene, which does, and I should specify, there are two very graphic scenes which depict a chemical and surgical abortion, and the opening scene does depict a D&C where a baby is actually dismembered using a curette inside of the mother's womb. So it is a very graphic and shocking scene, and one of the criticisms, this came in for a lot of criticism from pro-abortion outlets and film critics who seem to focus more on their own antipathy for the pro-life cause than for any actual shortcomings in the film itself. And they criticized this scene, particularly one of the asides by the doctor, or the actor portraying the doctor performing this abortion. Anthony Leventano is the name of the person portraying the abortionist. Now, during part of the scene, he says, "Beam me up, Scotty," and a lot of film critics use this as a kind of a cudgel to beat the filmmakers over the head with, because they saw it as unnecessarily demonizing abortionists or trivializing what or trivializing the abortion process. When the fact is, they just demonstrated how ignorant they are, because the actor in the film, Anthony Leventano, was an actual abortionist before he came to realize that the barbarity of killing unborn children. He performed thousands and thousands of abortions, and he even gives lectures now to groups like Students for Life, and goes around to different college campuses explaining the process of abortion and why it's the taking of a human life. So you have film critics who have no experience, have never seen an abortion, who have no idea what it entails, other than that they want it to be preserved, and that they have a dogmatic political position saying that this is a woman's reproductive choice. Other than that, they have no actual connection to the issue of abortion and no knowledge of what it entails, and they're dismissing something as contrived, when the person in the film portraying this was an abortionist for over a decade. And it just goes to highlight the ignorance of the people who are demanding abortion on demand and abortion at all costs. They don't actually have an awareness of what abortion is like, or what the abortion industry is like, and definitely not what Planned Parenthood is about. If anything, you could say that the filmmakers downplayed some of the more egregious and callous and the callous nature of this industry, in the sense that there are videotapes by groups like the Center for Medical Progress and Live Action and other pro-life investigative journalists and activists, which portray doctors cavalierly dismissing the life of the child, and people at Planned Parenthood discussing selling fetal remains for profit. And you can watch all of these videos, or most of them that are still up. You can watch them on YouTube, and you have abortionists who perform late-term abortions during the third trimester, like Leroy Carhart laughing and jovially dismissing the concerns of people who really feel that this is a human life. These people are on camera doing this. So, if anything, you could say that the filmmakers downplayed the callousness of some of the abortion doctors that you see in this film. And another quibble that they had was the fact that the filmmakers highlighted the profit motive involved in abortion, and this just goes to show you how ignorant they are of how Planned Parenthood and abortion procurers actually operate and the motivations they have, because profit is the number one, despite protestations to the contrary, profit is the number one motivation for Planned Parenthood, which is the main abortion purveyor in the United States. There's one scene, and this came in for criticism from the same critics. There's one scene where the antagonist of the film, Abby Johnson's supervisor, who leaves to go to Houston and whose job she inherits, reprimands her for the fact that she raised a question about whether they should really be increasing abortions, whether they should be having target numbers for abortion, the same way that police departments have ticket quotas, or that corporations have quarterly earnings goals. And this was savaged by the pro-abortion film critics who reviewed this film, when the fact is, this is exactly how Planned Parenthood operates. The antagonist in the film uses the analogy of McDonald's, which they say they have lost leaders or things that they sell, but their real product is the food, the French fries or burgers. Just like for the abortion industry, the real product is abortion. For Planned Parenthood, that's their main product, and that's their most lucrative product is killing unborn children. And yet, in terms of propaganda, in terms of what they market to the American public, they say, oh, we are a reproductive health organization. We dispense birth control pills, and we test for uterine cancer. And that's another off-the-cuff remark that Ashley Bratcher, the actress portraying Abby Johnson, makes. The fact that they found a woman who had uterine cancer. Now, I don't question that there actually were women who might have had some a beneficial encounter with Planned Parenthood that had nothing to do with abortion, but the fact is, their reason for existence is servicing women who want to have abortion or who are pressured into having abortions, and abortion is their main motivation. That's the reason they exist. If there weren't women that needed abortion, you wouldn't need Planned Parenthood. There are tons of other health organizations that do birth control education or cancer screenings or pap smears or mammograms. And the fact is, Planned Parenthood doesn't even really do those, but they consider any sort of interaction with a client to be equivalent to an actual abortion. So if the woman comes in and they have a 5 or 10 minute talk, that's counted as an interaction, and it's the equivalent of having an abortion. So they can say, only 3% of our only 3% of our interactions involve abortion, but that 3% is providing 90% of the funds that keep Planned Parenthood running. There would be no reason for them to exist if it weren't for abortion. There are tons of other resources available to women who need cancer screening or who need birth control, access to birth control. So it's really a ruse, and the fact that film critics couldn't understand this just demonstrates that there's an ignorance about how the abortion industry operates and what their purpose is, and how you can see through their propaganda and dissect it to get to the truth. And I think that's one of the reasons they fear movies like Unplanned or Gosnell, is that it really demonstrates for you firsthand what an abortion is. It's the taking of a life. And there's a great scene that captures the essence of this debate, where the actress playing Abby Johnson gets into an argument with someone from the Coalition for Life, which was the group that she ultimately joined, but which conducted prayer vigils and peaceful demonstrations outside of this abortion clinic. She gets into a debate with this man where she tries to convey the idea that Planned Parenthood is fighting for civil rights, and that this battle to maintain abortion is the moral equivalent of the abolition movement against slavery and the civil rights movement, which fought against racial segregation, and even people that fought against the Holocaust, which is ironic when the member of the Coalition for Life points out that all of these things involved dehumanizing a certain category of people, putting a certain group of people, whether it be a race or an ethnicity, above another group of people, and stripping them of their rights just because they were different than you. And that's essentially what abortion is about. People saying that this form of human life is less valuable, and in fact it has no value if it encroaches upon or impinges on the lifestyle or choices of another form of human life. And the only distinction between the two is that one has made it through the birth canal without being murdered, and the other is still in utero. So I think that encounter in the film gets to the heart of the matter when we're discussing abortion, and it essentially boils down to a group of people who want to consign a certain humans to kind of strip them of the rights they should be endowed with by their creator and endowed with by virtue of the Constitution, which protects human life and liberty, neither of which is protected currently, and that's just an inescapable fact. Now, I know there were also controversies from the other side. Even people who were Christian didn't like certain aspects of the film. The fact that there were people involved who weren't Christian, and they believed that this should be a way of presenting the gospel. And I do think if you watch the film, you get the notion that abortion is not just wrong because it's it's ethically wrong from a scientific perspective that these are are babies that can feel and that they can even think after a certain stage of development, uh, embryonically. But it's not just wrong from a scientific point of view, but it's wrong because it goes to the heart of what humanity is and why we are here. And I think that's something that's inescapable, even if there's no overt evangelization. You get the idea that one of the reasons, and arguably the main reason that abortion is wrong, is because God has created all human life, and all human life deserves respect, certainly more respect than is accorded unwanted babies in the United States. And I thought of that when I thought of the chapter 26 in Leviticus, verses 34 and 35, during the scene when the fetal remains are carted off. A barrow of fetal remains is carted off, and the people from the Coalition for Life ask to pray over the oil drum that's filled with the aftermath of abortion, the little babies that were dismembered and taken apart and then disposed of. And I thought of this part of Leviticus where it says, "Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths, as long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it." So this scene took place on during one of the weekends where Planned Parenthood apparently schedules more abortions than they do during a normal week. So there were abortions taking place on Saturdays and Sundays, which are meant to be holy days, and they're basically taking apart children because it's more lucrative. And this scene took place during one of those. Is supposed to take place during one of those weekends when Abby Johnson and all the other characters who worked at Planned Parenthood were called in to perform dozens and dozens of abortions. So the idea that God isn't pleased with people who are not disrespecting the Sabbath, not just in terms of not obeying formulaic rules, but just committing these horrible transgressions on his holy day. It's something that I thought I was reminded of when I watched that scene, and there are a lot of other scenes like that in the film. Although it does include a lot of non I guess what you would consider secular or non sacred reasons for opposing abortion. And there were, for example, Nat Hentoff was one of the most outspoken opponents of abortion, a lifelong civil libertarian, and for the past 2 or so decades of his life, a fervent advocate against abortion and a pro-life activist and writer. And he was an atheist. By all accounts, he was an atheist for most of his life, or all of his life. And there are very valid scientific reasons to oppose abortion. If you understand that it is inchoate human life, it's life, and killing it is not all that different philosophically from killing or murdering someone who's who's a teenager and an adult, and the abortions that are performed and that are still legal, there's almost no difference between murdering a baby in utero at 6.5 months or 7 months, and murdering a prematurely born baby who was born at 7 months. And this is something that Gosnell brilliantly illustrated, because Gosnell not only murdered babies that were born alive, he would also murder babies at 6 months or 7 months, babies that could have been born and had fulfilling lives and little to no health problems. He killed those as well, and there was no distinction in his mind. He was thinking much more logically than people who support abortion on demand, because there is no substantive difference other than one baby has passed through the birth canal. There's no substantive difference between killing a baby that's 6-7 months old in utero and killing a baby that's born prematurely, which is what Gosnell did. He did both of those. And I think Unplanned really should cause people to question their beliefs about this, especially if they have like a lot of people that support access to abortion. They haven't really gone through the process of critically examining why they believe what they believe. They usually just have very vague, hazy ideas of why they support abortion. They assume that it's the feminist thing to do, that it helps women and its assertion of their rights, but they don't actually consider what an abortion is, because it's hard to actually, unless your conscience is seared, it's hard to actually consider abortion, to think about the process and not question why this is legal and why it's acceptable. It's hard to reason your way through to a position where you support dismembering a baby, in most cases for no other reason than it encroaches upon a woman's lifestyle. The amount of abortions that are performed out of medical necessity is, as a percentage, is nil. It's very hard to justify what's going on right now, and I think Unplanned does a great job of crystallizing this issue. So if you do know people who are on the fence or questioning, you should invite them to see this movie. It's already more successful than virtually any film this production company has made, and it's going to be in theaters in the coming weeks. They're opening more screenings, more theaters for it. So I would just suggest go to it, regardless of what you believe on this issue. Just go see the film. It's a expertly done film, and I would highly recommend seeing it while you can.